Welcome everyone. In this video I will show you how I tackled the challenge of adding seatbelts to my AC2 Litre. I know that a lot of classic car owners will not want to make such modifications, but if you do, there are three main points to consider. Firstly, you need to be sure the seatbelts won't increase the risk of injury. Secondly, the anchor points need to be strong enough. And thirdly, you might want to avoid vandalising the original trim and other parts. When I was 8 years old, I was riding in the back of Dad's Morris Minor when I got catapulted into the front of the car when Dad braked from only 10 miles per hour. This opened my eyes as to how brutal a real accident could be like. The front seats of the AC don't have fixed backrests, so a low-flying backseat passenger might injure someone in the front seats, hence my desire for belts all round. On my AC, belts had been installed at the front in 1970, but not correctly. The shoulder straps were anchored near floor level, which would tend to push your shoulder down. They need to be held near shoulder level. The makers of those old belts, Britax, recommended that you use the short floor-mounted strap from the opposite side of the transmission tunnel, so that it doesn't wrap around the seat. That is, the two belts cross over each other between the seats. The issue of strong anchor points gets a bit complicated. When crash tests were introduced in the 1970s, it was stated that 20 G was the maximum recommended rate of deceleration for a person to avoid broken bones. Taking the case of a heavy person, say 24 stone, that would place a load of 3 imperial tons on the seatbelt, or 1 ton per anchor point, or about 10 kilonewtons. I've made that 1 ton figure my starting point for calculations. I then did some approximate strength calculations on parts of the car body, both wood and metal. I won't try to go over these, but you can get a visual idea of the reinforcements from this video. Many people seem to think that the wood frame will collapse like matchsticks if you lean on it. In fact, it is very strong. Mild steel is stronger relative to size, but ash timber is stronger relative to weight. More so in bending due to the greater thicknesses used in practice because of wood's low density. A little known fact is that wood's strength varies depending on how long the load is applied. For impact loads its strength is higher. It is also more resilient. What this means in practice for this project is that any metal brackets fixed to the wood frame need to be large enough to spread the load. Thin sheet metal also needs reinforcing to stop it buckling. I checked what forces are required to tear wood screws out of wood by consulting building industry equations. These are based on the density of the timber, which I have taken to be 0.6 for seasoned ash. The AC's wood frame appears to be stronger in design than many other car wood frames I've seen. I believe it was designed by the Polish aerospace engineer Marszewski, who AC employed after the war. By comparison, some small open-top sports cars have wood frame designed for lightweight rather than strength. Such cars would need extra reinforcements. One weak area on the AC is the roof frame, which looks as though it was added as an afterthought, so I'd not recommend attaching anything to it. I bought the seat belts and some fittings from a company called Belt Up Safety here in the UK. These are universal belts for classic cars up to 1972, that are allowed to use chrome buckles according to UK law. Most of the brackets and girders I added are aluminium and mostly 6mm or nearly 1/4 of an inch thick. I calculated the dimensions needed for each bracket to take that 1 ton load per anchor point. I started with the rear seat belts. For the 4 lower anchor points I made a large aluminium channel girder to add to the existing frame under the rear seat. When I restored the bodywork, I reinforced some of the attachments on this frame, ready for the seat belts. Some of the required holes were already in the aluminium panel that covers this area. Belt-up safety supplied these reinforcement plates with threaded holes for the 7/16 UNF bolts. I bolted the plates to the back of the girder. I'm testing the position of the shoulder strap prior to completing the brackets. I looked at photos of professional installations for rear seat belts. Many of these had the reel hidden under the rear shelf and the belt emerging through a slot in the shelf. The belt then had to pass over the top of the seat. This seems like a bad idea. In a crash, the belt will press the backrest cushion down and forwards. The downwards component of the force is the reaction to the reel. On the AC there isn't enough room under the shelf to install the reel, but the shelf is quite deep itself, so I put the reel just above it. I decided to use the swinging shackle as supplied on the belts I have as a fixed guide, thus relieving the seat of any loading, not to mention wear from the belt sliding over the seat. Here is one of those brackets. I use channel girder because it has to accommodate the seat backrest bracket. It also gives room for the bolt securing the reel. To spread the loads I added 2 wooden blocks. The bracket is bolted to the new plywood shelf, which is an integral part of the wood frame. It is a strong old birch plywood, 9mm thick. To strengthen it more, I added a loose section of 12mm ply underneath, with washers stuck in place as you can see here. The bolts are loaded mostly in shear. In fact, you can tug on the belt with no nuts on the bolts to confirm this. These zinc-plated bolts will rust in contact with the plywood, hence the application of clear wax oil. Here is the swinging shackle being used as a fixed guide. If you thought that was complicated, brace yourself for the front seat belts. Here is one of the 2 light gauge brackets I made. You can see the very large bracket used to secure the reel. The 3 number 12 gauge screws holding it down should withstand over 1.5 tons pull. My only slight mistake is that there is little limited room to get a spanner in to fix the reel to the bracket. Here I'm fitting a wooden template for the shoulder bracket prior to making a stainless steel one. Aluminium would not be strong enough for what is effectively a cantilever. The shoulder strap runs diagonally from the bracket to the person's shoulder as viewed from above. That puts a sideways component to the bracket loading of about 30% of the forward load, or 0.3 of a ton with my 1 ton criteria. 6mm thick grade 304 stainless steel is strong enough as long as its height is kept short enough. An added bonus of using stainless steel is that I could polish it up to look nice. Done in 2 stages of medium and a fine on the buffing wheel. Here are the brackets and reinforcements coming together. That block of wood at the bottom is not fixed to the car frame as it is loaded under compression. The reel and part of the belt is concealed behind the trim panel. This left the issue of how to avoid modifying any of the original trim. You can see here what the wood trim looks like. The answer is to make a new version of this trim with a section cut out for the belt. The old trim remains undamaged, ready to reinstall if required in the future. Time to try it out. You can see that the seats don't give much lateral support, so seat belts help to stop you sliding around when you take those fast roundabouts. The holes for the lower fixings had already been drilled for the old belts back in 1970. When attaching to seat metal, you will need reinforcement plates to stop the panels from buckling. With colour-matched belts, chrome fittings and partly concealed, I don't think it spoils the look of the interior. It can be removed at any time, such as for doing a photo shoot. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.